And welcome to Market Insights. I am Lavina Emma. It's a lovely Wednesday morning, even though it's raining out there, but still a beautiful day. So thank you for joining me on today's episode of Market Insights as we discuss how digital assets can be regulated properly, that both the people who are putting out digital information out there are protected, their data is protected, and also the government can effectively regulate this industry to ensure that nobody is victimized or nobody is defrauded in how they handle their assets online. So to discuss this issue of digital currency and digital assets and our online information, keeping everything safe, I have a guest who is joining me virtually to discuss how we as Nigerians can protect our digital information on the internet. Because, you know, every day we have information always put online, whether it's our emails, whether it's our online banking transactions, there's always one information or the other stored online. So I have an expert on digital assets and not just with cryptocurrency, but other means of storing information online that will be joining us to go further into this. Now, there's a question that's sparking a debate across industries all over Nigeria right now, and it's something that everybody should be very concerned about. There's a question that is sparking the debate across industries, and that's a very important question. And this question is Nigeria poised for the coming wave of artificial intelligence or the AI revolution? Now, Nigeria has many reasons to be optimistic. It boasts a very young, tech-savvy population. As you know, our population, we have millions of young people under 30 in Nigeria. So a growing tech startup scene, a government who is actively formulating a national AI strategy. Now, we need these things to actually indicate a very strong commitment to embracing our artificial intelligence potential. However, there are significant hurdles to overcome. The International Monetary Fund has said our AI preparedness index is very low in Nigeria, and our digital infrastructure, human capital, and regulatory frameworks need to be worked on to prepare us for this AI revolution. Now, a reliable access to electricity will also prepare us better, and also very good internet connectivity. That's something millions of Nigerians always complain about, and it's not like it's a vain complaint, but it's something which is genuine. We're all affected by this at one point in time or the other. Now, these things are very crucial for AI development, and Nigeria faces gaps in these areas. Additionally, we also need to foster a skilled artificial intelligence workforce, establishing regulations to ensure ethical and responsible AI use. So all these steps are very critical to ensure that we in this country and also in this African continent embrace the AI revolution that is taking over the whole world right now. So to discuss further on digital assets and also Nigerians and also Africa's readiness for artificial intelligence and how safe is our digital assets online, I have Professor Olaleye Awe. He's an expert in technology and also in cryptocurrency. So he's joining us virtually this morning. He's also a serial entrepreneur in everything that has to do with cryptocurrency and digital assets too. So are you here with us, Professor Awe? Welcome to Market Insights. It's always a pleasure having you on the program.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine.
Okay, so we're talking about preparing. First of all, let's just start with our digital assets. In Nigeria, we know that we always have a lot of information that we store online, a lot of data that we put online, not just our digital coins. We also have information, and going forward, people are beginning to create contracts that can be curated and stored online also. Now, how ready are we as a country when it comes to protecting all these digital assets, and what steps can be made to ensure that these regulations are very responsible and ethical for all the parties involved?
Okay, so being that I've been in the industry for quite a while, and also in line of my work, I've had to put certain structures in place to ensure digital data safety and stuff like that. I would say that to a large extent, a lot of the big corporations in Nigeria are doing their best to be compliant with the ISO standards of data safety and all of that. And I think the recent policies around data safety has also helped a lot of Nigerian companies to find compliance in that area. But I think in the light of the recent events that we have seen of Nigerians having their data sold online on the dark web for very cheap amounts, it shows that there's still a lot of lapses, especially in the government quarters. I believe private businesses have been doing their best to be, compliant in that area. But when it comes to government institutions, I think there's a lot of lapses regarding how data is stored and how it is retrieved and used. And I think the government needs to really look within its systems and ensure high compliance. And I think that's the major problem in Africa. Also because I think we also have um, we don't have a unified data strategy in Nigeria that ensures that everybody within the country is captured and properly represented in whatever data collection. Like in Nigeria, you have different, you have BVN, you have NIN, you have different um, representation of data of the same person, which most of the time can be confusing, when it should just be maybe one particular one, and then every other institution and companies can, take data from there, And I also think it's also because the we have not solved the problem of having a central database in Nigeria. There's a lot of different databases involving different institutions. Each government comes and decides they want to take another set of data. Even our driver's license system, you see that after you use the driver's license, when you want to renew, you have to go and capture again. And you have to wonder, where did the initial information that was captured, where did it go to? And you see this in the same thing happens with your passport and all the other different this thing. And it just shows that we don't have a unified data strategy yet, which I believe is important before you begin to talk about things like AI and all those other things. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that, Professor Awe. So, yes, the bank verification number, the BVN, is for everybody that owns a bank account. So, it's for people who need these numbers to actually access their the funds on their accounts. The same thing, national identification number. All these things are for Nigerians to be able to identify themselves. The same thing with the passport. But like you rightfully said, yes, with all these numerous identities that are out there, the BVN, the NIN, the passports, the driver's license, yes, every time you want to renew, they tell you to come back and capture your data again. So now in that kind of scenario, I'm asking for your suggestions on this now. Would it be more efficient for all these different organizations to store this information in a bank, perhaps a cloud or an online bank where everything is stored, or an online app where everything is stored? So in the event that somebody wants to renew or wants to get access to something very important document, they just, okay, your name, okay, you did this registration already, okay, let's check our information online, and then they just get access to this. So what are your thoughts on this, and having all this information stored in one place so that people don't have to keep coming over and over to recapture and re-register again when, for example, if your driver's license expires?
Okay, so I would say that we definitely need to have a unified system in place, which means there's a central database that contains basic information about each person who is born in Nigerian, right? So it can be from so in a lot of countries, it is usually tied to your tax information. So everybody is expected at some point in their lifetime to pay taxes. So the tax information forms the basis for which every other information is built on. Now, we don't have to necessarily copy the same thing. We could build ours on, say, your identity information. So the moment you're born, your data starts being populated, right? Which means from the birth certificate, for example, you could then have other information getting added to that person's identity. But at the moment, we don't even know who is Nigerian and who is not, because anybody can go and get a Nigerian passport. You can literally create any document, as a foreigner to pretend that you're Nigerian. A foreigner can easily get a Nigerian birth certificate, right? Now, these things are possible because there is no central database that can check if that person already exists in the system. Do you understand? And this is why it's also possible for crime to thrive, because if there's no way to check people's identity and track them, I can tell you for free, there's some people that they have five, six, seven, maybe 10 birth certificates and different identities. They can be anybody they want to be at any point in time, you know. Now, these things are only possible because there is no central information store that gives you that makes it difficult for things like that to happen. Now, not that people don't do those things abroad. It's not like you don't have identity theft and all of that. But identity theft suggests that there is an identity in the first place, right? Not when, for example, you don't have an identity and then you change the one that you have in the system. So that's why I believe we need to first decide what forms the basis of the identity of a Nigerian, right? So if it's your birth certificate system that you want to use as a basis, then it means that everybody who is born in Nigeria will have data created for them, which is accessible centrally, within the Nigerian space. Now, if I go to a bank, I just need to present that particular number, which they can then add whatever information they want to add to it, right? Now, that makes it a lot easier for every information or everything that I do to be traced from when I am born to when I am dead, right? And this is how, a lot of, because if you don't have that, then a lot of the decisions that will be made on assumptions. Because right now, we don't even know how many Nigerians there are. Some will say it's 250 million, some will say it's 230 million, some will say it's 300 million, some will say it's 120 million. We don't even know for sure. The last census that was done several years ago, maybe 20 years ago plus. And those things makes it difficult for planning. This is why, the country is more or less running on, I don't want to use the word, but, we can do a lot better. I think we have the expertise, we have the, people, we have the technology to do these things. Whether there's the political will to implement this thing is a different thing entirely, right? Like you rightly mentioned, the BVN only applies to those who have bank accounts. And if you go by the statistics, we have very low number of people with bank accounts. So which means that that cannot serve as an identity system, right? If we use the NIS system, which obviously should be the actual system that works, the NIN can only be done, many people don't even have not even been able to do their NIN till now. Some people have done it, they've not gotten their identity card for years. And then you wonder how they're going to be able to, and sometimes you're even trying to access the NIN information and they tell you the server is down. This is the 21st century, for crying out loud. These things should not be happening. So it means that the basic infrastructure that we need to put in place to ensure that certain things are um, in place before you begin to build on it is not there. And that's why, when I hear that Nigeria is developing an AI strategy, I'm wondering what are they going to build it on? When the CBN is talking about a cashless society, I'm wondering what infrastructure are they building that on? Because whether you like it or not, the country where I am currently, I've done transactions for years and I've never had one failed transaction. And that is mind blowing because almost everything, is done cashless, and I've never had one failed transaction that has been either reversed or, of course, we know all the realities we have. So it means that we need to go back to the foundation and decide what are the parameters of identifying who a Nigerian is. Now, once that is decided, then we can begin to build that system to the point where it can then become central to every other, whether it's banking, whether it's taxation, whether it's identification at airports and all of those things can then be built around that, right? And that is one of the things I believe that any serious government should focus on, right? First, do a proper census. Let's know how many of us we actually are. And then secondly, build a central database that forms the basis for which every other service and thing can be built upon. Yeah, so that's what I think should be done. Whether it will be done is another thing entirely.
Let's say yes, it will be done. Yes. Okay. I
Okay.
mentioned that our preparedness here in Nigeria, in terms of technologically, we're not really prepared because we're still battling with things like our digital infrastructure, our human capital in terms of people who are researching and understanding what technology is all about, and also what websites are all about, what using the internet is all about the internet of things. We still need the manpower to understand all these things. And also electricity too is also a very key factor in all of this.
Yeah,
So in terms
very
of
important.
accessing the internet, having that digital infrastructure, these are the challenges that we are facing in Nigeria, not just in Nigeria, in other African countries. So in terms of whenever we have to go online and fill up, perhaps maybe fill in your credit card information. These are the informations that are always stored online. And when we don't have adequate protection for all these things, it's easy for any hacker to perhaps maybe access a bank's website or their database where their customers' information is stored to get all these things. Now, okay, I'm just asking you now, as an expert, as a serial entrepreneur, with all your experience now, what would you advise the government in coming up with a very strong regulatory framework that can protect Nigerians' online information? Yes, you said carry out a census, make sure we know who the real Nigerians are. Yes, that's key. But going forward, what other things can they also do to protect our information that is stored online? Because everybody has information about themselves stored online, no matter whether you think you are just living alone in some rural place. But yes, there's some information about you that is stored online. So how do we protect this data on the internet?
Okay, so I think it starts with, like I've always said, the government cannot expect people to do what it's not doing, right? So before the government can say, okay, these are the guidelines or these are the policies that we are going to enforce, the government has to lead by example by showing those systems in action, right? So, for example, in developed countries, before you can access services, there's certain information that you have to have in the system, right? If you don't have that information in the system, you are not eligible to access certain benefits, right? Now, that is only possible because the government has done its job of putting a system in place that every other entity can build on, right? So I don't think the government can come up with policies out of thin air if they don't have something that's already functional. that can show an example to others to know what to expect, right? So, like I said, the identity of a Nigerian is still very much unknown. We don't know who is a Nigerian. And before you can begin to say you are accessing government services or private services, you don't even know if you're doing it as a Nigerian or not, right? They will say, okay, if you have a Nigerian passport, that automatically makes you a Nigerian. But there are a lot of other people who are not Nigerians who have Nigerian passports, right? So, which means that the government needs to go back to the drawing board to, look inwards. What is the system we need to put in place first and foremost that then ensures that every other person who wants to build on that can do the same thing. So, for example, if you take a country like Estonia, for example, Estonia has the most advanced e-governance system in the world, and they even have something they called e-residency, um, identity, which means that if you apply for that and you get it, anywhere you are in the world, you can identify as an Estonian with that digital identity, right? Now, this means that the government, anywhere you are, can easily say, okay, we issued this person this identity document. And but there's been cases where you take a government issued document to a government institution, and the government institution can't even find it anywhere in their own system. So you wonder who issued it in the first place, and these are the issues. These are that's where the problem is, right? And the government needs to deal with that first and foremost, because we need to first of all have a system of governance that, whether it's digital or offline, that works, right? Now, most of the well, companies that I know, especially in the financial industry, they have guidelines and policies that ensures that they must keep customer data safe, right? And these things are standards across the industry. You cannot, if you do otherwise, you're going to get punished heavily for it. And so that ensures that, and that's why one of the systems in Nigeria, data stores system in Nigeria that works is the banking industry. The BVN is like one of the most robust data store in Nigeria at the moment. It's like one of the most reliable. That's why most services require your BVN to verify your identity, because that's like the most trusted at the moment, right? Even that has its own flaws, because, well, those that are familiar with the matter can tell you that, the BVN has its flaws. But the point is that is the closest to something that works that we have in Nigeria. And I believe the government can take a cue from that. And I don't think we have the expertise. I can say that for free. We have the expertise to build these systems and secure them. But whether the willingness to do it is there is a different thing entirely. Because to be honest with you, it's easier to manipulate election results, manipulate government finances if there is no clear data storage system in place, right? So it's easy for you to do what you like if there's nothing compelling you to behave as you should, right? And this is where you need to ask yourself if the government really wants to end corruption. Because if you want to end corruption, whether you like it or not, most of these transactions pass through the banking system. So the banks see them and throw the blind eye. So what do you expect the ordinary people to do? We'll just wait for every election to be promised that corruption is going to be eradicated, and then of course he gets worse and worse from there. So which means the government needs to start by showing the example, right? What system do they have in place that shows that, okay, we know who our people are and we know how they can access our services and our offerings as the government and all of that. Then other institutions can then be compelled to be compliant to that. So, for example, if the government puts an identity system in place, it means that every other service, banking, taxing, immigration, driver's license, and all of that will have to connect to that to get first to confirm that that person is actually a Nigerian and recognized as one. And then, of course, every other person would then have to have that system of compliance in place. But if the government is not even doing that, whatever they're coming up with will be just, you know, will be just drama, because at the end of the day, you're not showing by example. So why should I do what you're not doing? Do you understand? So, and I think that's why the government needs to really dig in and deal with this issue once and for all. It's been a problem for a long time. It's not something that is new. The government and every successive government have promised, every time the government will say, oh, we're going to do a census, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But eventually nothing happens. And that's why it's important for the government to really pay attention to this and solve this problem. Because whether you like it or not, is also why our election system is a bit wobbly, because we even have, I understand, some goats and cows that are registered in our election database. So it's really very interesting. But we need the government to lead by example by first putting in place a system that other services can then connect to, and that can then form the basis for whatever it is that they want to do afterwards.
We know we have a lot of technology entrepreneurs, cryptocurrency businesses here in Nigeria. Now, how can these people, because people who are into this kind of using the internet all the time, they do a lot of work on the internet, they store a lot of information on the internet. Now, with everything going on, how do you now protect your business from hackers, from people who, especially in Nigeria, that we know we don't really have a very secure digital framework? How do you successfully protect your online businesses? What would you advise these people in this situation?
Okay, so I think most of the infrastructure that we use in Nigeria to build websites, web services, and all of that are usually not locally hosted. So, most of them are usually with some of these cloud services providers. And I think most of them already have security embedded in those systems. But there's also the need for people who are building to consult with the right set of cybersecurity experts to help them develop a security strategy around whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's a website, whether it's a web service, whether it's a web app that provides a certain service, right? Because it's not all services that require the same level of security, right? If your website or service does not require financial information, then the kind of security you need is not as heightened as somebody who deals with, collecting payments and stuff like that. And because of the way the web works, it's most of the time important for people to be clear about, the kind of service that they're bringing to the World Wide Web. And that's going to form the basis of the security strategy that you're going to put in place. For financial services, I think it is mandatory for them to have certain security systems in place. And that's why, do they still get hacked? Of course they will, because security is an ongoing, is a dynamic field, which means what worked yesterday may not necessarily work today. And that's why you have people in cybersecurity studying the trends, studying the new levels of threats, and preparing solutions for that. And that's why, like I said, you have to know what your business is about. If your business involves collection of payments, then you have to ensure that whatever payment gateways you are integrating are very secured. I think most of the popular ones are, quite secure in that manner, but you also have to look at your own side of the operation before you deliver the information to the gateway in question. Is it possible for someone to steal data, along the way? And those are the things that I believe that those building these systems are very much aware of. How I think one of the major problems in the Nigerian online space is there's no clear policies in place from government. And I think that's also largely because even the government itself is not very clear on how data should be handled. Because, like I said, some of the identity that were being sold online were from government systems, right? Some of them were from the NIN registration system. Some of them were from, immigration and all of that. Now, those things are only possible because the government itself has loopholes that they need to plug. And that's why I believe that at the end of the day, it comes down to, you know, each party identifying their role in collection of data and transmission of data. Because if I am just a social network, for example, that has nothing to do with financial data, my job is to secure the information, the personal information of my users, right? But that's not as sensitive as if I was going to be collecting payment. Like an e-commerce website, for example, requires more security systems in place because you're going to be taking payment information, which, if is stolen, could lead to loss of funds, right? So if somebody just steals my name and my picture, the person most likely can't do much with it. But when the person is able to access more information, like I think one of the things that I've seen as trends especially on social media in Nigeria, is when people do give away and request for certain personal information, like your mother's name, your date of birth, and those kind of things. Those are very sensitive information that can be used to steal your identity. And it's important for people to understand that before you put your information anywhere online, you need to be very sure that you're connected to the right service. Even banking platforms are getting cloned these days, where you receive an email that has a link that looks like your bank's email, your bank's website, and then you go there. It looks like your bank's website, but it's actually a clone. And those things could lead to a lot of loss of funds and all of that. And that's why I think educating people is at the top of the security food chain. If people are not well educated on how to identify scams and spams, they're going to most of the time fall into it. Because even so recently I got an email from one service that I use, and the email was promising something, very interesting. So I clicked it to see what it's about. But when it got to the website, I saw that the URL was no longer the URL of the service that sent the email. So I went back to the email to see the source of the email, to see where did it come from. And I saw it was not even from the service, but the branding, the way the email looks, everything was exactly how that service sent emails, right? Now, I could only catch that because I am informed to know that I need to check the URL to be sure that it's the right URL. And that's why banks will tell you that make sure that you're typing their website yourself, not using a link from an email, which could be, of course, a spam mail from a scammer, right? And that's why, customer education is very important. I think banks do a good job of educating about security all the time with some of the emails they send very regularly. But the question is, how many of us read them? Because that is one thing that is very common. Most of us we just pass, because either we feel we're too busy, and many a times that is how you miss vital information that could save you from, a lot of losses down the line. And so I believe education is very important. And I think the government may help also by putting some of these things into the school curriculum. Because if people understand online safety, online security, and identifying spam and all of that right from the young age, it makes it a lot easier for them to be more conscious. Now, it doesn't mean that some will not still fall, but the number will drop drastically because once you know what to look out for, how to identify certain things, it becomes a lot easier for you to avoid, the losses that may come from being from falling for spam emails and all of that. I think majority of the losses that come to people in Nigeria is mostly through spam emails, emails that look like it's coming from a certain entity, but it's just a clone trying to get your information. Or somebody calls you and says, oh, we're calling from your bank. We need um, your date of birth, for example. Or they tell you, oh, we just sent a code to your phone number. Can you call it out? And some people will think, oh, okay, and then they'll call it out, and before you know, your account is empty afterwards. So some of these things people need to be aware of them because it's going to then help them to protect themselves as well. Remember that security begins with you. You're not. Other people cannot protect you as well as you can protect yourself, right? But you can protect yourself against the threat that you don't know. So, which is why it's important to, also put educating customers, educating users at the forefront of the security chain, especially in Nigeria, where people don't like to necessarily read, because I've seen a lot of mails that a lot of banks keep putting out, to educate their customers about how these spammers work. But I can tell that a lot of people don't read those emails. I can tell, So yeah, I believe that is some of the ways to get around that in the Nigerian system.
That's Professor Awe, yes. Okay, yes. Well, I would have liked us to just touch briefly on artificial intelligence because it's something that is, it's spreading fast all over the world, and it looks like we're not really catching up with other countries of the world here in Africa, and particularly here in Nigeria. So, if we could just touch briefly on that. But perhaps on the next episode of this technology discussion, we could also always touch briefly on that because artificial intelligence is
Mhm.
something that is revolutionizing the way businesses operate, the way education is
Absolutely.
functioning, the way healthcare, the manufacturing industry, the way we transport ourselves from one place to another is something that is influencing every sector of our human lives. So it's something that, yes, a lot of enlightenment is needed for it also. And the reason we decided to talk on this digital assets is because we know that what we feed to our artificial intelligence is what it returns back to us. So if we are not protected in the right, in the responsible and ethical manner, it's very easy for people to even hack this AI and get all that information out. But perhaps our next discussion will focus more on artificial intelligence and how to enlighten people more that it's not here to take over the world, but here to make people move faster and smarter in how
Yes.
we do things. But thank you so much for your time, Professor Awe.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, let's take a look at the money markets this for today, Wednesday, 3rd July. We'll look at the Central Bank of Nigeria rates and we'll also look at the parallel market rates, how the dollars, the pound sterling, and the euro is faring. So at the Central Bank of Nigeria rate for today, Wednesday, 3rd July, it's 1,444 naira to $1. It's the same with yesterday's figure. And at the parallel market, it's 1,515 naira to $1. But that's an increase on the parallel market. And for For the pound sterling, the Central Bank of Nigeria rates it's 1,861 naira to 1 pound sterling. And at the parallel market, it's 1,905 naira to 1 pound sterling. And between the CBN rate and the parallel market rates, the parallel market figures are always higher. So for the euro, it's 1,581 naira to 1 euro. That's the CBN rate. And the parallel market rate is 1,600 naira to 1 euro. So that's an increase from yesterday, like a 20 naira increase in the parallel markets for the euro. So those are our money market figures for the dollars, pound sterling, and euro for today, Wednesday, 3rd July. Thank you so much for watching Market Insights this morning as we discuss how to protect our digital assets online and the kind of regulatory framework that policymakers should make to protect our data online. Many thanks for watching the program. I also want to thank my guest, Professor Awe, for sharing his insights in this discussion. I am your host, Lavina Emma. Do stay tuned to the news update on Sook News Television.